Well, we're live. Arif, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of us who don't follow your story, can you say a few words about your current role in the company?
Yeah, hi. My name is Arif Hameed, and I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for CNR Software. We are in the credit risk management space. We're also part of the Constellation Software holding group. So
Mm,
Constellation Software owns probably over, I don't know, over 1,700. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but they own a large number of software firms. But all of them are run autonomously.
awesome. And I was privileged and lucky to be part of the event in Toronto, and I was very impressed by Toronto cybersecurity scene and how connected people are. It was really delightful for me. It's I had a great time at this event. Um, and thank you for being part of this, by the way, Arif. And I noticed so that people don't just have the dot on the line of and have an idea of your career trajectory, but more connecting several dots that will make the line. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you get started in cybersecurity? What was the first door that you kind of knocked on in your
Okay,
journey?
why don't I just start off with I have a computer science degree from a university in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
I started my career in software quality assurance. I didn't really enjoy programming, so I'm like, okay, I mean, I did it in school, but that's not something I wanted to do. I was testing software, and the first role was a company that built software for the equities, options, futures. I
Mm-hmm.
got into that. Then I moved into another firm that was more on the client server side, so a marketing firm. Um, I was looking at software quality assurance. I enjoyed finding problems and gaps and reporting on them, but software quality assurance was a little bit of a challenging area to be in because, especially when you cut down, when you have layoffs in R&D, a lot of times the first people to go would be people in software quality assurance. So I said, okay, what's my next career trait? I could grow in software quality assurance, but I thought, look at different options. A bunch of my friends were at the time chartered accountants. That
Mm.
was a term they used in Canada. Now they moved over to the CPA firm, the CPA term that they use in the US. They said, if you are testing software, why don't you test computer controls? This would be a good pivot for you, right? I said,
Interesting.
okay. So then I said, I did my CISA, Certified Information Security Auditor
Mm-hmm.
examination. I prepared it. ISACA Toronto had a 8-week course. It was all Deloitte partners teaching it. Was able to pass the exam on the first try, and then an opportunity arose at Royal Bank of Canada. I used to be an intern with them in the past, and I got into their application IT audit team. So I was
Mm-hmm.
doing application audits globally within their capital markets and wealth management functions. So that gave me that foundation of just security, access controls, and the general IT general controls, right? That typically auditors do. But from
Mm-hmm.
an internal audit focus, the IT audit team was the biggest one in Canada. RBC is the largest bank in Canada. It's a top 10 North American bank as well. From
Mm-hmm.
there, I moved into an IT risk role within RBC Capital Markets. The
Mm-hmm.
one of the auditees really liked my work, and an opportunity came. So I did a stint there dealing with my previous team as well as different IT risk initiatives, and
Mm-hmm.
then I moved on to TD Bank in a business information security officer role. They used a different term at the time, business technology risk manager, but it is the BISO. So I was doing retail banking, and that was my first direct kind of security advisory role. I did that, really understood like payments, business banking, retail banking. I really enjoyed it, but I was missing the audit piece. And then TD Bank stood up a third party cyber risk management function within the InfoSec function, and I came over and I was
Mm-hmm.
doing security assessments of very large global entities you've heard of, and then others that were like more legacy relationships because TD Bank has bought a number of firms. Um, so like I never worked in external audit, didn't do professional services, so it's kind of my
Mm-hmm.
opportunity of from the outside looking in, right? So that gave me a good understanding of security programs at different organizations, and then Equifax had their breach. Equifax Canada itself was not a party to that breach, but from the customers within Canada, they were concerned and they had to stand up like a customer assurance function. And I was brought over. I was putting a number of vendors under the coals, and then tables turned where I was on the receiving end explaining Equifax's controls. And likewise, I helped re-get the ISO 27001 as well as the PCI and SOC for the Canadian unit. So that was it gave me a good understanding and just connecting on the service provider side, right?
Hmm.
That gave me a holistic view, especially even dealing with contracts, security schedules. I dealt with as both a customer and now as a service provider, and then I enjoyed working there. And then Munich Re, which is a German reinsurance company, which has multiple legal entities all over the world. They have an innovation arm for Munich Re Life and Health North America. They stood up a digital insurance agency. So I was brought over as their first chief information security officer.
Amazing.
And then from
And
there, I finished my stint there, and then I came over to CNR Software.
mhm.
This was a divestiture from FICO, and I had to build out their cybersecurity program.
Interesting. So that connects all the dots. Well, Constellation, CNR, FICO, but and it's like it makes a lot of sense. And Munich Re, you mentioned, was it a unit providing cybersecurity insurance?
No, so many of the financial institutions will have like an innovation arm. They want to
Ah.
avoid kind of the red tape, so they'll stood up an autonomous innovation arm where they'll stand up a business line. So
Hmm.
Munich Re stood up a digital insurance company. What they wanted to do was take a lot of their carrier partners and put some of their easy policies that can be done over the web,
I
online.
see. I see.
It was a
Amazing.
short stint. Unfortunately, that business function failed, so it was shut down.
I
But it was a
see.
good experience, right? Just learning.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. Your starting point was more like testing and audit, and all the way to CISO. That's phenomenal. And for a lot of people, that position, C-level cybersecurity executive, it's really the shiny prize on top of the mountain, and that a lot of people are trying to climb. What will be your advice from the vantage point of your career for someone who is just getting started, whether SOC analyst or cybersecurity engineer or even a student still trying to figure out getting their computer science degree, trying to figure out what to do with their life with everything that's going on? What would be your advice? I know some people are indexing on networking, some people are indexing on certifications. Some people advise go broad and then figure it out. Other people say, well, just pick one and go deep. So, from your perspective, what would you advise yourself? I don't know, a few years back.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think obviously at the CISO role, you have to have a breadth of knowledge, right? Because you're going to be dealing with multiple domains. Um, so I kind of came through the route of audit, and then I got into kind of a BISO role. Others are may come through the SecOps or AppSec. So my advice is that if you're in a certain role, sometimes you may want to do a lateral, right? If you're on the GRC space, if you try to get more technical, or likewise, if you're in the security operations AppSec space, do a stint in GRC, right? You want to kind of round your knowledge, and then as well as to grow, you want to be targeted. So my strength was obviously working in the bank. That was the financial services, and even when I went to the service provider side, even my current role, even though we're technically not a fintech per se because we're not dealing with payments, but we're dealing with banking customers. So try to ensure that, okay, you want to fill in your gaps, but then be very focused. Okay, if you're in the healthcare space, the opportunity to get that senior security role would be higher in the healthcare space, right? Or if you're in manufacturing, right? So try to kind of build on that.
Mm-hmm. And well, one thing about cybersecurity that I like is that there's never a dull moment. There's a lot of things going on. Uh, Partially because our life is changing, the world is changing. From geopolitics perspective, from technology perspective, it seems like AI is taking over the world. So from that, in that regard, for someone who was working towards a computer science degree for a long time now, kind of facing the fact that a lot of people are using Cloud Code or Codex or other tools to write code. So a lot of people are revaluing career paths and some of the things that used to work in the past, but this is kind of a brave new world. Is there anything that's kind of AI specific, not necessarily AI specific, anything that you see in kind of new crop of up and coming cybersecurity executives that puts them at an advantage vis-a-vis their peers in getting roles, getting exposure, getting promoted, given the current set of like, circumstances? Again, things were things things were, I guess, less important in the past. Now, and going back to AI, I think it just reshapes how people think about career progression. So, what impressed you in some of the newer generation that maybe is taking advantage of some of them that you would advise someone who's still in college or just getting started, like a junior SOC analyst, to over-index?
Um, so I guess the key factor, even if you take AI out of the equation. So when I started, I mean, mainframes was big too, right? I meant at one time,
AS
I mean, you
400.
didn't have the internet, right? Like there was blockchain, like there's cloud, like I'm sorry, cloud, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I guess the most important piece for anyone starting out, or even those are mid career, or even in their current role, I mean that adaptability. There's change is constant, right? How do you ensure that you can adapt, right? And I think that's the critical factor for success, right? Things are changing. Can you evolve with the time? Right now, we're talking about AI, and I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's next, right? But moving from AI, something else will come, right? Can you adapt to that? And even like AI is here, but the security fundamentals are all the same, right? I mean, now you're dealing with agents, or now they're using the term non-human identities, but we used to refer to them as proxy accounts, service accounts, right? I mean, that whole access control is still there, whether it's a human or a non-human, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things, confidentiality, integrity, availability, that's still there. You just have to adapt it to the new norm, right?
Interesting. I think it's very, very good perspective. Uh, being Having this mental acuity and being flexible and adaptable and everything that comes along. It certainly is par for the course for someone in cybersecurity because everything is changing so fast. But there's also an added layer of somewhat of an adversarial nature. There's good guys and bad guys, and obviously the good guys are defending and the bad guys are attacking. So it's a bit of a not only things are changing, but also there's an opponent that you actively is trying to undermine.
But I also would add is that I guess we just had the issue with Hugging Face, and I'm not going to go into the specific details, but this was accidental, right? So some of these type of AI agents going rogue, or kind of looking into those pieces, right, where people are not understanding the full capabilities of AI and some of the risks, inherent risks related to it, right?
And it's a good segue to that part of the conversation. We'll double click on the Hugging Face incident, but
Yeah.
what do you see from your vantage point? What are the two, three trends kind of sweeping the industry, both from technology perspective, but also how the role of CISO is changing? What do you see from your position?
Um, I think the CISO will need to evolve. I mean, certain organizations you're seeing the CISO as also kind of the privacy officer, right? And there's a number of people that may have a legal background, and others may not come from a legal background, but they're able to kind of understand privacy. And then now with AI, now you're starting to see chief information security officers and chief AI officers, right? That evolution is actually happening in certain organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether the CISO heads AI or not, right? There is going to be an overlap, and understanding that is important, right? It's depending on your industry.
Certainly. And kind of going back to the Hugging Face incident, I I see the publicly available information, but also I'm not technical, so I may lack some of the perspective. When you first saw the news, what was your reaction?
I'm glad that we have certain controls in place at my firm where we're blocking, you know, unapproved AI models and then tools, etc. Right. So we have a number of governance process in place, and it's constantly evolving. But especially where certain organizations where the staff can access everything, that's problematic, right? And that was okay. I was kind of happy when I had a discussion with our head of IT, and I was like, okay, it's good that this has been blocked, right? And we have to. Internal team members, we develop software, so obviously there's a need for a number of tools, but we have to have certain guardrails in place, right?
Absolutely,
To ensure
absolutely,
only authorized tools can be used.
absolutely. And on this note, well, as they say, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So maybe it's just a sign that this Overton window is shifting, and there'll be more attention as a result of this. So it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise. So uh, all organizations rushing to adopt tools will be a little bit more cautious about how they go about it. So maybe there's some silver lining in that story. I'm hoping.
Yeah, no, it was, we actually had to, we're planning to send a notification out to our engineering teams, right? Just reiterating where there's some pushback on some of the things that we were doing, and it just raising awareness, right? The
Hmm.
importance of why certain controls are in place, right? To prevent sometimes these types of mishaps.
Certainly, certainly. Um, well, switching gears a little bit. Again, setting AI aside,
There.
what uh, what are, I don't know, two or three most important things you are thinking about, worried about, uh, planning for, and it could be, I don't know, regulatory environment. It could be technology shifts outside of AI. It could be geopolitics. What's top of mind for you right now?
Um, so we do business with European banking customers. So obviously, some of those, the Digital Operational Resiliency Act or DORA, right, is top of mind. Where there's a number of things that we have to kind of, I mean, we've put in a number of things in place, right, but ensuring that we're aligned to that, the EU AI Act. I'm concerned about obviously the geopolitical risks that are occurring. I think potentially the cost of AI tokens is going to get extremely costly. So I'm wondering the direction around AI, right? Many
Hmm.
of these companies are running in major losses, right? And like AI is here to stay, but I suspect maybe in the short term, maybe we may see some slowdown, right? Um,
Well, some people argue that open source, whether it's still versions
yeah,
or otherwise, will evolve, which will be substantially cheaper than some of the frontier labs.
but
But that's
I
again,
think,
that's again speculation.
yeah, but the cost of running data centers may rise, right? So there's a number of materials you need for those servers, and I understand, I guess, with the situation in the Middle East, as well as I think China's holding on to rare earth materials. I
Hmm.
mean, some of that will likely be impacted. To what extent, who knows, right? But I'm sure that there will be an impact.
Certainly, certainly. Um, awesome. That's a very, it's, as you said, there's never a dull moment. There's no never a dull moment in the space. And as we look into the future, there is so much that can change still. People talk about quantum computing. Uh, Again, geopolitical risks. I would doubt they'll go away. Polarization in society and certain relationships, whether it's Europe or between U.S. and Canada, it seems sometimes the forces work to kind of attraction, and sometimes it's the opposite way. So there's a lot of things going on. So if you mentioned you don't have a crystal ball, but imagine if you did. and you can look into the future and identify two, three trends that will be important for cybersecurity executives, whether it's 12 months from now, um, maybe 24 months. What would those trends be?
I think, especially around AI and even privacy, some of the regulations will tighten. Like I reside in Canada, so they're a bit behind, but there's going to be laws passed. I suspect that there's going to be tighter laws. I know with the number of tariffs and other things, maybe certain countries will use some laws to just build their industry, right? They're going to push back, and maybe the intent was publicly that this could be the reason behind why they're doing certain things, but they
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of build their own industries. So there's a number of countries that are very, top of the line on the cybersecurity space. You may see other countries in Europe where they're going to start building out their cybersecurity capabilities, right? And organizations and firms, right? Right now, I guess a lot of the focus has been of the US, Israel, and other countries, but I suspect we're going to start seeing some countries in the Far East as well as Europe, right? Where they'll start
Mm-hmm.
building out some very cybersecurity titan firms.
Certainly. And how about changes in technology other than AI? I mean, I mentioned quantum computing, um, or even kind of when we stay with AI. What some of the trends do you see? It's a lot of conversations at those in person dinners kind of revolve around different vectors, new technology used for defending the organization, repelling attacks enabled by that new technology, and also enabling the business to deploy some of those new tools. What are your thoughts? And again, 6 months from now, we'll probably shorten the time horizon. 6 months from now, 12 months from now, what do you think some of those conversations will be revolving around at those CISO,
Yeah, I guess with
CISO events?
mythos and AI based attacks, right? So many of these startup and other firms where they have a solution to kind of just really respond quicker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now with Mythos and others that are about to come out, some of it is already public, right? Many of discussions with peers, they're worried about just vulnerability management and just managing the attack surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
What tools do we need to kind of speed up our response, right? Unfortunately, somehow the attackers are always a number of steps ahead, right? And on the security space, we're always playing catch up. So how do we kind of respond quicker, right? And
Yeah.
what are the tooling out there, right? That works,
Certainly.
right?
Well, it's the job of the attacker is somewhat easy because they need to be right once, and can keep looking for the weakest link in the chain. And as a defender, you need to be correct 100% of the time, and it's a little bit of a symmetric game that we're playing. What I'm hearing, and I wonder if you could provide some feedback, is that um, like basic quote unquote housekeeping and patching and cybersecurity hygiene, go kind of AI or not going to basics, is becoming more and more important these days because what used to be 0 day exploits now becoming, I'm hearing like 0 hours or 0 minutes, essentially shrinking the time the defenders have to respond once a certain vulnerability becomes available in the wild. And that pushes even more pressure on the teams to make sure all the basics are covered and making sure all the kind of basic cybersecurity hygiene is taken care of, um, patching what not, because the time to respond is getting shorter and shorter. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think many organizations are going through their own internal analysis, right? Especially with the use of AI and automation. How do we speed things up? How do we speed our deployment? How do we speed our our patching? Because even with AI, you have the tools. Your vulnerability list will rise exponentially, but likewise, how do you patch in a faster manner? Like how do you put in the automation to do the backout plans, test it, ensure everything is there, and then likewise, I mean the utilization of AI to really understand. are these vulnerabilities exploitable or not? So there's a
Mm.
lot of back end work where internal teams were reviewing things, and now they'll be using more AI to speed that up, right? Does this make sense now, right? I guess your scanner or whatever tool, or even the advisory saying this is critical or high or whatnot. But when you do the analysis, depending on your environment, what is the true severity to you, right? And I
Hmm.
think a lot of that tooling and processes are going to be better.
Well, I just want to double click on two things here. One is, um, is there a trade off in terms of, you patch the vulnerability, but it breaks your system, and is there like a conversation, or is it a choice basically? The risk and the cost is X, and the risk of breaking things with this patch is Y, and kind of you evaluate in deciding which vulnerability to patch and which one kind of push the business to accept the risk. Is it a valid statement? And I'd love to hear your perspective.
No, absolutely, because like we're a service provider, so if you do a risky patch, we go down, and then depending on our service level agreements, I mean, there's revenue implications, right? So it all depends on your organization. So some may do it faster because the risks are less, right?
Hmm.
But if you're like, you can't risk bringing systems down, right? I mean, you've seen different outages of different organizations, right? And they had some huge implications,
Yeah,
right?
CrowdStrike
Not a
comes to
loss
mind.
of revenue, but also the cost, right? And yeah, I don't want to name and shame organizations, but we all know who they are.
And the other side of it is, because when you analyze your vulnerabilities, you prioritize high low, high risk, they need to be taken care of, and then medium, however you rank them. And the implication is vulnerabilities that are relatively low risk, they're deemed unexploitable. You can deprioritize in fixing and addressing them. However, going back to kind of the models, the powerful models, one thing that people found out is that some of those models, they're relentless. They have a task, and they do everything they can to complete it. And if the task is to find vulnerabilities, they were found to be chaining low value vulnerabilities, and then getting more and more higher access, and chained low value vulnerabilities become much higher risk when combined. And this was somewhat of a revelation for quite a few people, and it was definitely a topic for the conversation in some of the rooms that I was privy to. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I guess the big piece is it demonstratable? So you
Mm.
have many different organizations say this vulnerability is this, and you need factors X, Y, Z, et cetera, right? So some of these ones are like really, I wouldn't say far fetched, but it's just the probability of like this many things going wrong all at the same time would be tough, right? So I guess even with threat modeling, okay, here's the vulnerability. You will use your own set of tools, or maybe you can build something with AI, right? To say,
Hmm.
okay, can we do this? Can this exploit work in our environment? And I think that's something new that's going to happen a lot more, right? With better
Certainly.
AI tools, you can kind of do it yourself, and it's like, wait a second, this might be high, but whatever these parameters are for the exploit, it doesn't work here, and this
Hmm.
is why.
Certainly. No, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Um, Kind of going back to a conversation about career advice, a lot of people think of networking, getting to know your peers, uh, whether it's if you're in financial services, maybe it's also cybersecurity executives in financial services, or even kind of across the board. There are various organizations. There's Avantas and Cyber Risk Alliance and CISO Society and Aphinia. Um, Obviously, we're trying to play our part. Uh, what are your thoughts on the value that these associations and these groups have for cybersecurity practitioners? Um, for someone who's again who's maybe a director and looking at this CISO role down the line, how do you define the value of those organizations from your perspective?
These organizations are all great that you've mentioned, and I think a lot of it is that face-to-face interaction when you go to these dinners. You may deal with someone on a forum or virtually, right? But like when you meet someone in person, there's certain things that you may discuss, and Chatham rule house rules are more kind of in place on that in-person meeting. So I find these events highly valuable. Like you just did something recently in Toronto, and in Toronto, it's a many people know each other, but still, right? There's always people you may meet, right? And then also by coming to these dinners or other events on an ongoing basis, I mean, that's how you build relationships. Networking is not a one-time thing, right? You meet people over time and then you connect, and then afterwards, right, you get the opportunity. You may have a similar problem, you may get along with someone, or I mean, there's different factors that influence you connecting with someone, right? And these type of events help build those relationships, right?
Hmm. Certainly, and it's what I find is you're absolutely right. It's you're making investments in those relationships, and then you can take a withdrawal, right? So, and it's
And even for the sponsor, sorry to add in, I mean, it's a nice way where it's like you may want to have that, you want to kind of understand that sponsor, but you don't want to have that direct touch with them because like you're going to book a 30-minute or an hour call with demos and stuff. And this is kind of a lighter touch, right? Okay, you know what's interesting? You know what? I'll follow up, right?
hmm
So that's also kind of a good thing about some of these dinners, and especially the sponsors, where it's kind of a lighter touch. You're familiar with it, but you may not want to invest in the time on a separate call, but you'll get enough information that it may be worthwhile, or you know what, this isn't for me, right?
it's a very good point, very good point. And as you mentioned, we live in this age when you get on a Zoom with someone, and if you don't know the person, like, how do you know if it's not you're not talking to an AI? And there've been like so many cases kind of along the same lines, whether it's issues with recruiting when or even in financial services. There were, I think there was an instance was I think it was like a year ago when someone wired a substantial amount of money thinking they got a direct request from the CEO of the company, even though that particular executive was the only human on a Zoom call with three other quote unquote people, but they were actually all AI generated. So
Actually,
going back,
the other thing I'll mention is the other nice thing is that there are certain conversations with the vendors that they may not be able to say over a virtual call. So there's even some of
mm,
the Chatham House rule, or you know, some nuggets that you can get that they wouldn't do over like a phone call or a meeting, but if you're at a like a private space, right? So
absolutely,
that I find valuable too.
absolutely. Anything, and it's a bit of a self-serving question. Anything we always trying to prioritize our product, quote unquote, product roadmap. What would be one thing that you wish we put in place in 2027?
We as in Aphinia, or
Aphinia, yes. Yeah.
um, you know, I think many organizations are doing dinners, and there's others that have recently just done a dinner in Toronto, right? Potentially, maybe a different format, right? Maybe outside of a dinner, if you do some other type of activity or event, I think that would be a good change, right? And
Hmm.
especially like I mean, my cholesterol is getting high, so if there's an alternative to a dinner, that would be nice too, right? Another type of
For
activity, right?
sure. No, something to think about because I think yeah, there is a little bit of a saturation in that space, and you see certain sentiments flaring up on LinkedIn when people like push back on
And like
those
I
things.
started playing pickleball, like I've been maybe some type of activity where it's you know, it's not as complicated. Like golf is like a long one, right? But
Yeah.
something that's short, easy, and it's not difficult for someone to play or
Hmm.
participate in, right?
Certainly. No, it's definitely a good idea. Um, Arif, I know we're coming up on time. What one thing you would like to ask of the audience or of Athenia as we wrap up?
Um, so I know I've been asked about what I think is the future, and then for the audience, like, I mean, what do you all think, right? Of what is the big thing that's coming up in the cybersecurity realm outside of AI?
Well, I'm sure we'll get some comments on this video, so I'll make sure to share this feedback as we get it. And Arif, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting together around Sector, maybe other events in Toronto, and or maybe if you travel for some conferences, I'll see you there.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely.